Oops. Sorry, caught me fixing my hair. All right, today let's finish Chapter 11. Chapter 11 is aggregate and material requirements planning, but we are solidly in and we need to finish. Oh, I picked the same color. I hate that. Material requirements planning. I meant the same color as Tuesday. Of which, right, we had started talking about bill of materials. So we'll get back at that. That is one of the inputs of MRP. Then let's talk about the idea of an MRP record. Just all by itself, because this is all working its way up to the MRP, Material Requirements Planning, algorithm. An algorithm is a process that consists of a series of steps. You'll notice that. Now, having laid out a substantial menu of work, of course, I'm in no hurry to get right straight at it, because right now on UB Learns, there is something that I think that you might be interested in. I didn't push out an email announcement, you guys that are here with me in real time, so you probably wouldn't have noticed it because it only went up about 15 minutes ago, but I posted our final grading scale. It's a PDF, and it's especially the first 4 rows. It's no mystery to you. Yeah, you knew this all along. Your final grade, the actual letter grade in MGO302, is the result of simply the sum of all of the points that you've earned from all the variety of opportunities that we've had this semester. Yeah, okay, you knew that. This is a really good time of year, though, to take a few minutes to strategize. Right? We are not at the end of the semester, right? We have some weeks ahead of us, but we can kind of see it coming. It's on the horizon. And this is a good time to think about, where do I want to land, literally, at the end of the semester. Now, this scale, the first 4 rows aren't any mystery to you. Those were in the syllabus from the beginning. But what is, if you're just wondering, well, what's different about this, is that it's the full grading scale. And it is just another explanation of the same thing that was in the syllabus, that your grade is based on your total score. You've got to get at least, you will receive the grade, the highest grade that you qualify for, given your total points at the end of the semester. Yeah. Okay, got that. Now, what do I mean by strategizing? Okay, so I'm waving around a piece of paper. I basically marked up this document. Oh, of which I'm proud to announce that as of this moment, which is actually in real time Thursday, right? What is today? April 19th? 18th? 18th. 509 people, or 84% of our class, have already passed. You could walk away from MGO302, and we've got stuff up ahead. We have another project, we have an EQS module, and we have a whole nother exam, but it's based on points, and you could walk away from this class and you'll have passed this class. Interestingly, over a third of the class, this is impressive, 233 people could walk away from it today and walk away with a C in the class. And very, very impressive, there happen to be in our community 5 people who could walk away from MGO302 right now with a B-, ignoring the second project, ignoring the other EQS module, and ignoring the entire third exam. Well done. Now, I'm not real worried that as of right now in April, there's going to be this mass exodus from the class, because I think most everybody in the class, including the people that have the bragging rights right now, they're aiming for a different grade other than the one that I was quoting, right? Okay, yes, but this is what I mean by strategizing. If you would, take a few minutes at a certain point. Do we really only have purple chalk here? I mean, I know it's coming up on a holiday weekend, but okay, I found some white chalk. And retrieve your score so far in MGO302. I have here an absolutely fictitious person. I sat in my office about half hour ago and I made up these numbers. They don't represent anybody in particular. Let's suppose this was you, or was me, right? Whoops. No. On exam 1, wait a minute, where's my fictitious person? Your score was 48. On exam 2, I'm just going to put some made-up numbers here. Your score was 52. You're looking in on native son. Oh, good for you. You got full credit, so that's 20. I don't want to list out in this fictitious person every last EQS module, but let's say that this fictitious person actually was very attentive to EQS modules because let's think about one wonders, is the camera still running? I mean, hey, does anybody want to come here and be on camera? We have to kill some time. Oh, wait, back? Oh, yay. Oh, so we don't know. So we don't even know in here how long you were without audio, but we're talking about the grading scale, right? And we're talking about you use your scores. This person must have, if this is the sum of their EQS scores, must have gotten 6s, right? Because they only left 2 points behind. And then there is the category of bonus points, which in the gradebook is actually broken across a couple different opportunities. But I'm just going to say, let's say they got 2 from somewhere. Okay? Now, why am I doing this, and what am I encouraging you to do? Put your numbers here, right. What do they add up to right now? Hopefully I did the arithmetic correctly because I did it just before I came to class. I get 156. Oh, right. This is one of those folks that has already passed the class at this point. As a matter of fact, let's see, 156. If they just quit MGO302, they actually have a C- in this class. Now, whatever this score is for you, all right, let's make some assumptions. They're reasonable assumptions, but we do in the next couple of weeks need to keep an eye on these assumptions. Let's assume that this person is going to work hard on the fine wine rack, the second project, and get another 20 points. And is going to be equally attentive to the last EQS 6, so get another 6 points. I'm just trying to project, and this is what I'm inviting you to do, how many points they would be holding. What's that add up to? Get 182? Going into the third exam. Going into our last exam. Oh, all right, so they would be going into the last exam with a 182, which means that if they just chose not to take the last exam, I'm not encouraging that. I'm just practicing using the scale, right? That's what a C+. But why are we doing this? To gauge what they actually need to do on that one last timed performance-based event, right, to achieve the letter grade of their choice. So let's say that this person is interested in getting an A. It's simple arithmetic, right? You say, all right, well, you need 246 points for an A. That's what the scale says. This fictitious person has 182. We assume, right, that they'll do that. That's reasonable. So 246 minus 182, I get, the difference is 64. What does that mean? They have to get 100% on the test. Actually, and something, details count, they don't have to get 100%, but very, very close to it, on the actual body of the test. But the third test will be like the second test. It will have 3 true-false bonus point questions, right? So you can overscore. So that's how you want to interpret 100%. But definitely, okay. So this person could get an A in the class, but they have to absolutely ace. And this is just what your situation to explore the third exam. And we can explore other grades. What about an A-, right? You're just looking at that total minus what you have. So for the A-, there's a little bit more breathing room. They have to put together 55 points on the third exam. which there's more breathing room. I noticed that that is still a little bit higher, somewhat higher than they have scored so far. Oh, well, what? Okay, why is this useful? Well, if this was you and you're interested in that, what that's implying for you is that whatever you were doing for those first two exams, you need to do more, right? Because you need to bring in the highest score yet, as opposed to, for instance, just scratch work for a B plus, 235 minus 182, I get, okay, then they would need, oh, that can't be right. We won't do the B plus. What about the B? 210 minus 182. You know, in case this was you, and you're feeling like, ah, well, this is all doom and gloom. If you wanted to be in the class, 210 minus 182, this person needs to score 28 on the third exam. Okay? That's not even 50% of the base questions. Because, well, what's, you know, what's going on there? What's going on there is actually not this one exam. It's the entire history of the semester. I made up those numbers. I was making up a person that's doing basically B band work. And so this is where we arrive at the end of the semester. The B, I mean, you didn't want to get foolish or anything in preparing for the third exam, but they actually don't have to post all that many points on the third exam in order to lock in that B. They can upgrade. That's what we were exploring. If they choose to upgrade, what that implies is they need to work a lot harder preparing for the third exam. Well, anyway, you could explore this for yourself. In having pointed this process out, one word of caution. So I'm just saying, you know, suppose you're a similar case, and you realize you need some ludicrously small amount of points for a B in the class, and you're way worried about other classes. Okay, I won't take that. I consider operations to be of paramount importance, but I don't take that personally. You know, you decide, you know what, I'm going to prioritize those other classes here at the big jam at the end of the semester. That, yeah, I mean, that's a very sensible way to strategize. My word of caution is don't get carried away with that process, because while this might look like a very small amount, it is infinitely possible, and it's been done many times before, to score much lower than that, right? Like by not preparing for the test. That doesn't, this sort of number, like a 28, doesn't imply that you could get that necessarily if you didn't prepare at all for the test. Any questions on that? Yeah, that arithmetic has been with us all along. Okay, I'm going to add on one other piece of advice and then go quiet on this. If you decide to aim for something, like here the A minus or even the A, you're in that category. I'm going to prioritize it because actually I want to upgrade and get the higher letter grade. Then this is the time of the semester in particular that you also want to pay very close attention to any opportunity to get even a few more points, because that comes straight off what you need then to achieve on the third exam. And so think about, well, like what are there? Well, there are the same old early points for the second project. There'll be a contest. We'll have a competition with the second project, and that's nice, but you can't really bank on that. We'll have the 3 true-false questions for bonus points on the third exam, and there's actually one other opportunity that's lurking in the structure of the course to earn a few more points and bring that target down. Does anybody know what it is? The last EQS. Because this 6 over here, when I said, well, you know, we'll fill in the rest of the semester, I was talking about EQS 6, which is in the last week of class. There is, after classes end, right, so I've been there in the syllabus the whole time, the so-called post-EQS. The post-EQS is open for a couple days, and you're more than welcome to just fiddle with it if you want. But what is it and what is it for? Well, if you've missed any EQS modules, because that happens, you definitely want to pay attention and participate in the post-EQS, because there's actually technically 8 EQS modules of which you receive your 7 highest scores. So this last one, which pulls questions from all the pools of the previous ones except for the syllabus one, this last one is an opportunity to upgrade if you have a low score or a 0 score. And even if you have mostly 5s and 6s, it depends on how hard you want to work at it, you could still possibly upgrade your EQS scores, because that one last one, right, the irritating thing about it is it's asking questions from the entire semester. The great thing about it is it gives you 8 questions, and it'll award you 1 point for each question. So there's technically up to 2 bonus points in there. They'll just show as part of the score, but that also figures into this mix. So, okay, so food for thought. Oh, I know I said that was the last point, but one more point. Just because this is, yeah, I know. This always comes up. It says so down here, but if you're 1 point away from a grade, you get the lower grade. I don't mean to be like dark or irritating about this, but there will be people at the end of the semester that will be 1 point away from the grade, and they will contact me about doing anything, right, for the 1 more point. Okay, I understand the emotion, but the answer, and I'm telling everybody right now, this is a completely transparent grading scale. The answer is there is nothing that you can do. This is a completely transparent grading scale. If you miss by 1 point, you have missed. At least, this is how I think about it, I showed you that you missed. I mean, a lot of times you probably were right below the grade, but the way that the class was being graded, that was never actually shared. So if you don't want to be caught in, and there'll only be a few people, but yeah, if you don't want to be caught in that situation, the advice down here is if you see a score that or a letter grade that you like, aim above this. Don't aim at this number exactly. It's kind of like throwing something heavy over a wall. You don't aim right at the top of the wall. Whatever it is that you're trying to chuck over the wall will come bouncing right back at you. You aim at a spot above the wall. Okay, and success then is yours. All right, so that is the absolute last thing. No questions? Okay, then we've got to go back to chapter 11. We still have a lot of work to do there. Although I know it doesn't necessarily look much like work initially to folks looking in. Because, let me go back to the visualizer. We were playing with Tinker Toys, right? That's where we left this. Only, no, they're not Tinker Toys. This is a physical model of a discrete part assembly process. Right, we had these 2 products that are assembled from sub-assemblies, which are assembled for components. And the whole idea is that we were going to draw up a more formal bill of materials. Now, you have room to do that on the next skeleton note page. Notice that there's a series of bands that have already been established on that page. It says level 0, level 1, level 2. If you have your notebook set up similar to mine, actually here's what I recommend, is to extend those bands onto the back side of the sheet before. Otherwise, you just might run out of room or need another sheet of paper. It's fine. Or maybe you can squeeze the images that we're going to work with in here, but I wouldn't try. Because I'm not going to try. I'm going to move to the board. So this one was clean, right? Yes! A clean slate. I need to quickly resketch. There was some business about something being level 0, level 1, right, and level 2. We are going to sketch a particular type of bill of materials known as a product structure diagram. It's pretty intuitive. But as we go, we're also going to be, do you see all the thumbnails at the bottom of the page? Attaching other language to it. That it's important to get it in our head right now because all this stuff builds up towards the MRP algorithm. So, Dave, are we at the board? Oh, okay. Sorry, couldn't see it at the screen. All right, so how do you draw a product structure diagram? Okay, you need a product. I'm actually holding two. So I need to pick one. I'll put the turnstile down for now. You begin with a finished product. This would be the thing that the bill of materials is dedicated to. All right, and you begin with a principle. Finished products are level 0 items. Did everybody hear that? It's just this convention of the language of material requirements planning. Finished products are level 0 items. That means that I'm going to draw a node and label it that represents the finished product, and right, I'm putting it on level 0. Okay, now I look at the product and I think about how to break it. I think about what was the last thing that was done before it was finished. And in the case of this particular product, you know, the transaxle, I created it from the two subassemblies that were described. That would be the first place it breaks if you were then breaking it back apart, like a destructive process. How do I represent that fact? I go down to the next level and I draw two branches. One of them represents that 1/2, the axle. I'm just going to write SA for subassembly. And one of them represents the transmission. Let me write the word first and then box it in. Subassembly. And let me say, oh, all right, those are on level 1. Oh, and right away, we are not done with this by any means, but we can attach two other very important keywords to it, because we now have our first parent-child relationship. Parent-child in the context of MRP, if you're looking at a bill of materials and you see that there is a branch below, what this means is if you declare the transaxle the parent, you trace the branch down to the next level. We would say that the transmission subassembly and the axle subassembly are the children of the finished transaxle. Now, you might be wondering why we're rehearsing like some very specific language for something. Yeah, I get it. It's made from these two halves. It's fairly simple. These graphical relationships that we're setting up, they're actually the underpinnings of an information system that we're going to build, okay? And that's why we rehearse. These are the terms actually that we use in building the, basically wiring up the links in the information system, the idea of parent-child relationships. All right, now we're not finished in that you could think of it as a destructive process, and there is more to the story. So I'm going to cross over here to the axle subassembly. And I asked myself the same question. Okay, if you're talking about just this thing, what went on before? Does this thing come apart? What was done in order to create it? Well, yeah, it was just put together out of these parts, correct? I'm just taking it back apart. I'm holding 4 parts in my hand. So I drop down and draw a total of how many branches? 4? I'm glad you said 4, because I led that, right? I said I'm holding the 4 parts. Yeah, because I'm trying to draw out a quirky thing about a bill of materials. It's an easy mistake to make if you're first getting used to them. Don't draw 4 branches, draw 3. The reason is I am holding 4 parts, right? And they go into this thing. I'm holding 3 distinct kinds of parts. These boxes are meant to be things, like unique things. And in taking the transaxle apart, I'm only holding 3 unique things, or Tinker Toy pieces. Right. Now, I just want to graphically represent them, that's all. Right. An axle subassembly is made from, one of them's a red rod. I'm not going to write that. I'm just going to write abbreviations at this point. You know, RR, red rod. It's also made from a green bearing, GB, and from... Now, the fact that there are 2 yellow wheels, that is important. This is typically on a bill of materials, yellow wheel. You would note it down there. underneath the branch. Yeah, oh, by the way, it is important you need 2 of them, but this is how you would represent it. This is how you would represent it. We're done when we have, oh, you know, is there anything more to explore here? Notice that we're down to the actual Tinker Toy pieces, so we're down to the end of the story. This is apparently the stuff that, the raw materials that we import in. So over here, the product structure diagram is finished. Let me reassemble that before these get away from me. The transition subassembly, it's even simpler. I'm going to have to draw its branches a little squint over to the right so that they don't run into that. But I just need to represent the fact that you need 2 unique part types, right? One of them is, I'm just going to write BR for blue rod. And the other one is, again, yellow wheel. You might be saying, well, wait a minute, that yellow wheel is the same thing as this yellow wheel. Yes, there's a high degree of commonality in our fictitious Tinker Toy products here, but you still draw it separately because it has a different parent. So this is what the branch would actually look like here, connecting to that parent, the transmission subassembly. So we have our first product structure diagram. You know what a product structure, we have made similar diagrams before in this class. A product structure diagram is actually, in a certain sense, a form of a precedence diagram. Remember that? Like from, first off, it was chapter 6, it was line balancing. You got to do this, and then the arrow, and then you do this, and then the arrow, and then you do that. Or even project management CPM, you got to do this, the arrow. It's going up and down, essentially the same thing, except these boxes aren't activities. They're not things that you have to do. They're actual objects that you would keep in stock, so that's the difference. It's why it's not, strictly speaking, just exactly like any precedence diagram we've already done. Now that we've finished one of them, we can also just rehearse a few terms until they become familiar. Let's see, so this thing called a transaxle, now that we're looking at its bill of materials, we would say that it is a 3-level bill of material. Yeah, I'm just counting them. Now, just a little bit of rehearsal so that we don't mess up. Since it's a 3-level bill of materials, that means that its lowest level is level what? 2. First off, we start counting at 0. We just don't want to ever get that confused. And, right, so here's a quirky little convention of material requirements planning. If you're talking about this business about levels from here to here to here to here, right, we call these low-level items, right, but they actually have the highest number. So we just note that. Let's see, what else? Oh, so going back to chapter 10, we now have yet another way to define those 3 basic types of inventory. Do you remember raw materials, work in process, and finished goods? Because another way that we could speak about those 3 fundamental categories is, let's think about this. A finished good. A finished good is an item of inventory that has no parent or no children. A finished good. A finished good is defined by this. It's either got no parent or no children. Which one? No parent. Right? That's a hallmark characteristic of this class of things that we call finished goods. They are, from a material requirements perspective, those items that don't have any parents. There's nothing above here. It's pure customer demand at that point. We assume we're selling this off to the outside world. Same thing with raw materials. Raw materials are items that have no children. They're no child items, right? It's something that we bring in from the outside. There's nothing from our perspective that comes before. Oh, and so work in process. Maybe we have an early glimpse into why, generally speaking, in reality, work in process is one of the most difficult types of inventory to plan for. Well, it's the only type of inventory that's complicated both by being connected to parents and simultaneously write to children. Okay, you say, well, yeah, I got that. All right, so I think that's pretty much our rundown. The thing is that for this sort of Tinker Toy example that we're building here, to complete the bill of materials, we did have 2 finished goods. So let me really, really quickly, let's see, the turnstile. We'd have one symbol that represents the finished good. That would be on level 0. Then I asked myself, all right, where does it break? What was done last? Well, in the story, we took that orange washer, we put it on the transmission, and then we put the top on it. So actually, in the case of the turnstile, the best way to graphically represent that is that that one's got 3 branches. Each of those 3 things. There's a top subassembly. There's a transmission subassembly, which is the same thing as the one over there. Another instance of commonality. And there is I'm just going to write OW. Yep, the transmission subassembly got away for the orange washer. Now, is there more to the story? In the case of the top subassembly, yes. It comes apart and all kinds of raw material pieces. I am holding 5 unique pieces in my hand, but I'm only looking at 2 Tinker Toy parts. So I'd say there's a blue wheel. And there is red rod. And I know it is important. You need 4 to make that pinwheel shape. So I put that there. Okay, let me put it back together or I'll lose all these pieces. The transmission subassembly is the same thing as last time, so there's a blue rod, 2 branches, and a yellow wheel. And then the orange washer does not come apart. It's one of the Tinker Toy pieces. Oh, so it's finished. So there's the other half of our bill of materials. The bill of materials for the finished product that we refer to as the turnstile. And it's finished. It's perfectly accurate. If you start studying more in inventory planning in particular, in operations in particular, you will find that people will fuss about us leaving. See how the orange washer is just kind of hanging here on level 1? And they say, no, you know, the best way to represent that is you should, low-level coding is what they call it. You should push it down where it's resting with the other ones. Okay, we're just tweaking it here. It was perfectly accurate before as well. Oh, all right, so we have our bill of materials. We have our bill of materials. This is known as product structure diagrams. Product structure diagrams are very, very useful in learning MRP. You don't actually, I'll have to confess, see them a lot in practice because you rapidly get tired of them once you have hundreds and hundreds of parts that go into something, because you just get this vast, dazzling network diagram. Oh, well then what? Well then what? There is something known as an indented bill of materials that, again, if you took an additional class in inventory planning, we would talk about. And it's a way of encoding parent-child relationships by using tabs. You kind of have to learn how to read it, but it prints out really fast, and it doesn't occupy as much space as if you were actually drawing it. So you do tend to see bills of materials more often encoded that way. We're going to stick with the visual example for our class. Now, that's how you build something. We need to add one more layer of complexity to that, because this is what MRP embraces. The only thing that isn't in there so far is the idea of time. You say, well, what do you mean time? Oh, you know, this word has never gone away. We were talking about it from the beginning of class. Each one of these items, we assume, has a lead time. Lead time, the delay between when you ask for something and when you actually can have it. Now notice that this is a list of everything, every unique thing that we drew a box for on the board. Yeah, these are all our inventory items. And we can kind of subdivide it to organize it a little bit. The top two things are the finished goods. The middle three are the three different sub-assemblies, and then these are all of the Tinker Toy parts, right? Before we go any further, we should stop and scrutinize this for a moment, because we're going to take this information and then we're going to combine it with this idea of an MRP record, and we're going to build this whole information system for coordinating the productions of these things. We're going to do that. That entire process has one weakness that can really cost you in reality, and it goes all the way back to right here. The one thing about MRP, Material Requirements Planning, that we always have to keep an eye on in reality is that MRP assumes that lead times are constant and independent of order size. Everybody hear that? That's actually in reality can be a really terrifying assumption. Now, constant just means that you see how there's just these numbers that have been quoted. What this means is, with the transaxle, I mean, the way you interpret that, it says 1 day. Okay, so if you want a transaxle, it's saying you have to wait a day. It takes a day to make one, assuming the children are in stock. Okay, if we go back to glance at the product structure diagram for the finished transaxle, the two children were the two halves, the axle subassembly and the transmission subassembly. And what this is saying is if you want a finished transaxle, okay, it'll be a day, we'll make one for you, but we have to start with an axle subassembly and a transmission subassembly. They have to be on hand and ready. It apparently, this up here, this must be like final fabrication or assembly, these delays, you know, because it's bringing the subassemblies together. And the same thing like with, whoa, what if there's not an axle subassembly laying around? Okay, well, we'll have to make one. The lead time on that is 5 days. It means it takes 5 days to create the subassembly, provided that the Tinker Toy parts are in stock when we start. The two yellow wheels, the red rod, and the green bearing. You see? Oh, all right. Okay, so this is how you actually read lead time information in MRP. But this isn't the frightening part. Go back up to the transaxle. We say, okay, if you want one of those finished goods, things that roll, right, it'll be a day if the two subassemblies are in stock. If you want 10 of them, it'll be a day, as long as there's 10 of each of the two halves in stock. Oh, you want 1 million of them? That'll be 1 day. See, it's not changing. That'll be 1 day, given that there's 1 million of the axle subassemblies and 1 million of the transmission subassemblies in stock. Okay, this is the assumption that MRP is based on. That's the independent of order size. It's just a certain number, that's the constant, and it doesn't matter how much you ask for, little or a lot, that's the independent of order size. It'll be that delay until you can have it, as long as the children are in stock. Okay, so I've got that. Now, with this, right, we can actually suss out, well, what if we want a transaxle and there's like nothing in stock? Which is actually a good question to ask if you're setting up one of these systems, which is basically what we're rehearsing here with pencil and paper. Oh, you say, okay, if I didn't have anything in stock and I want one of the finished goods, you're saying that would be important if I was setting up the system. Yeah, I'll talk to you why it would be important in a minute, but basically what you would want to do if you were setting up a system would be to sketch out a time-phased product structure diagram, also known as a time-phased product structure tree. Now this should look really familiar, because it's basically a product structure diagram just like we have on the board, except it's drawn from left to right instead of up and down, and it is scaled according to time. Now, the way to develop one is the same thing as we did on the board. You'd say, okay, well, I'm going to work on the transaxle. What's the lead time on the finished good? Well, it's that day that I kept pointing to on the screen, right? 1 day. All right, well, let's let each one of these columns be a day. So I'm going to, it's essentially a Gantt chart. Say, all right, I'm picking a point that's well over to the right because I need to leave myself room for this to start scrolling to the left. And I say, well, you know, that's us working on the final assembly of the transaxle. That's that 1 day that they're talking about. Okay, but wait a minute, it's not 1 day unless the children are in stock. Well, there's 2 different halves with the transaxle that you have to worry about, right? It'll only be a day if these 2 things are already there. If they're not there, then we need to figure out when we'd have to start on them. The transaxle has a 5-day lead time. The transmission subassembly a 2-day lead time. I'm just going to represent that graphically. Okay, with the axle subassembly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm booking 5 days. 5 days ending right before we want to start on final subassembly, final assembly. This is the axle. This is us working on it. There it's finished, and then you can begin the final assembly. The transmission subassembly, you don't need so much time. Only 2. Okay, now, wait a minute. With the axle subassembly, we're just, again, rehearsing those assumptions. It won't be 5 days unless this stuff is already sitting there at the beginning. And there was different lead times for each of these. Let's see, red rod, that's that one, 1 day. Yellow wheel, we got to keep an eye on that. Yellow wheel, 5 days, and green bearing, 5 days. Okay, let's back up in time. Axle subassembly. Again, very similar to what's on the board. We need to make 3 branches. One of them is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? 5-day lead time. And that is, we'll let that one be the yellow wheel. The other one is also 5-day lead time all the way through here. But that is for the green bearing. And the red rod had a shorter lead time. We only wait 1 day, so we're recognizing that day right in there. That's the red rod. For the transmission subassembly, we need a blue rod and a yellow wheel. Better check on the blue rod. Blue rod, oh, it's also only 1 day lead time. So 2 branches going, backing up in time to the left. One of them there, that's the blue rod. But then the other one reaching back 5 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's that yellow wheel again. And once we've got the whole thing represented, well, then we finished our time phase product structure diagram. Why do we care? We actually haven't gotten the important reading out of it yet. When you've represented all the items, you know, scaling their lead times, what you want to do is just find the leftmost point and mark it. Okay, that's where these 2 things start. Then down on the timeline, which didn't have any numbers on it until now, make that 0, meaning start. Because now I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Why am I stopping at 11? Because that's when the transaxle would be finished. I now know that if somebody wanted a transaxle and we didn't have anything, that it would be 11 days to turn it around. We would start by ordering the yellow wheel and the green bearing. This is a Gantt chart. Remember the Gantt chart? It's a representation of timing. Basically, these boxes here are delays in procurement, I assume, because those are raw materials. So there's us waiting for the order to arrive. And then these is presumably the subassembly and the transaxle, that's actual activity where we're putting stuff together. And that's the timing of it, when it would take place. Now, 11 days, again, just practicing the logic of MRP. If somebody wanted a transaxle and we don't have anything, it'd be 11 days before we could produce one. If somebody wanted a million transaxles, right, and we don't have anything, it'll be 11 days before the 1 million are done. Now, I want to point something out as long as we're looking at this graphic. It is another vulnerability of MRP. The ink that I used for axle subassembly, right, and the ink that I used for transmission subassembly, do you notice, going back to Gantt charts, that this graphic is implying that on the 9th day and the 10th day, we're working on both of them simultaneously? You know, this is the same things like from project management. MRP is assuming we can work on both of them simultaneously. It's kind of naive of that. You say, well, yeah, that sounds like a reasonable assumption. Yeah, it might be. Let's hope that we're not like a really small firm, like, for instance, the Fine Wine Rack and Cellar Company, where it's like the same person that does both those jobs. So they couldn't possibly be working on both of them simultaneously. But I'm adding to the story now. I'm adding to the story a complication that right now we're just going to note that MRP is completely naive of. It assumes that you can do anything simultaneously. There's no capacity constraints. It's just a question of proper timing. How long would it take? You say, yeah, okay, that's fine. Now, down here, there's the empty grid for doing the turnstile. Why don't you check my math later? Remember, it's just a sideways version of the original one we did on the board. I get 8 days is the total turnaround time if you graph it out with the lead times. So that's a good follow-up exercise. Now, I keep saying, and if you were setting up the system, you would want to know this number. I don't think I exactly proved that. But it's easier to talk about that in the context of now we're moving on to the idea of talking about an MRP record. Because what is MRP? MRP is a set of linked records. And before we set up a system like that, let's just look at one in particular. Now, this record on, note page 118 is not meant to represent anything specific. But just imagine that there's something that the record belongs to. All records are going to say what they refer to. They refer to some item in the MRP system. I just wrote generic because this one on page 118, we're only looking at the parts, right? But, okay, maybe it's yellow wheel. If you pull up an MRP record on the system, somewhere it's going to tell you this business about lead time. So I'm just adding information, and we haven't determined anything. I'm going to write 2 for whatever these columns represent. Because you'll see a grid. Are these days? Are these weeks? They're usually days. But they could be days, they could be weeks. Very rarely they're hours. I've seen an MRP system used to prep for certain surgeries, and they had changed these to hours. These are known more generally as, see the keyword down below? Time buckets. Because you're setting up the system and you need to make certain design choices about the system. And one is, what time buckets should we be using? What would just be the most useful in this case? Most of the time it's planning day by day by day. And you say, okay, we have daily time buckets. But, some systems that unfold over long periods of time, we can just group it together in weeks. We'll plan week by week by week or hour by hour by hour. Now, another keyword down below, another word or phrase that we know from before. There is another important issue that's reflected in the simple grid, and that is planning horizon. Because notice I added the numbers to the columns here, and they numbered up to 9. Okay, let's say these are days. We have a 9-day planning horizon. That's just the length of the record. It's just how much time it bothers to acknowledge. we're going to use these records. You can probably flip ahead in the notepad and see that there's just a bunch of copies of this grid up ahead, because we're going to use this grid here, this format, for setting up the Tinker Toy problem. But I will tell you right away that actually, if we were doing that for real, we wouldn't want to stop at 9. We would want to at least have it out to 11, if not 12, but at least 11. It's not that long, just because this is for demonstration in a lecture, and I wanted to reduce some of the visual complexity. But wait, why am I obsessing about 11 if it was for the Tinker Toy problem? We were just talking about 11. The transaxle's total turnaround time. If you're setting up one of these systems, one of the reasons why you want to know that for anything that the system might produce is you have to make sure that the planning horizon is long enough to encompass the worst case scenario that somebody asks for it and you don't have anything. If it doesn't, we say, oops, let's hope that doesn't happen very often, because that system is myopic. We use the same term that they use, like we're talking about people in your vision, nearsighted. That system is a bit nearsighted. There are circumstances that it may not warn you fast enough about something that you need to do because it can't see far enough in the future. All right, anyway, so we're going to just kind of like ignore the fact this is just a little bit myopic right here. Okay, now you can see that there's some labels here, and there's one other box that doesn't fit into the columns. On available balance, you always see an eccentric field that is to generally the left of everything else. That is telling you what you have right now. You know, if it's on a screen, that is linked to the data table that holds the current inventory records. We were talking about the inputs that you need, right, to even get started on building something like this. So I'm creating a situation where we have this generic thing. We can go ahead and say 2 days. We have 20 of these right now. Oh, wait a minute. There's generally another piece of information that is automatically retrieved, and that is lot size, and so I'm going to write a 50 there. What does that mean? It means that when you need more of these things, you order in multiples of 50. So well, why would you do that? Well, there's a variety of reasons why you might, but probably in this case it's because they come in boxes of 50. Right? So if you need 10 or if you need 27 and you're out, you need to get another box. They come in multiples of 50. If there's no such restriction in ordering, there's no fixed order size, then I think it's down here, isn't it? Yeah, there it is right there. We say, oh, well, that's a lot for lot policy. Anything you need, you can order that exactly, and that's exactly what will be produced or delivered. It's called lot for lot. Oh, now, in the interest of just filling out this illustration, let's look at the top line. MRP packages, there's really no giant in the industry. There's many, many different packages that you could buy for a business, and they have different variations on their format, but they all have the same top and the same bottom line. Now, the top line gross requirements, you're gazing 9 days into the future. You should see numbers on the screen. It's telling you, and I'm just adding some numbers that are in my notes, that there are some orders outstanding for this thing, whatever it is, and these are the days that it will be needed. So we're going to need, and better be ready with 10 of these generic things, whatever they are, on the second day. That's what that means. And then we've got to be ready to provide 60 of them on the fourth day. That's what that means. Those are the gross requirements now over the planning horizon. Now, what about the rest of it? Well, the rest of it is basically determining what we need to do given that this has been imposed on us. You know, these things, we have 20, and here's what other people are expecting. Let's fill out this record. I always think about it as working along the available balance line. I should note, because we were talking about this on Tuesday, that available balance means ending inventory in this case, to tie it back to something we were talking about on Tuesday. And what we're saying is, It's not the first day yet, right? That's in the future. We have 20 of these right now. We have 20 of these right now, and since there was no other information that I provided, that means that by the end of the first day, we would still have 20, right? And that's good, because going into the second day, 10 are going to be shipped or used. That's what that means. Somebody's expecting 10, which means 20 minus 10. By the end of the second day, we will have knocked the available balance down to 10, right? Oh, that's the inventory logic, right? We'll begin with 20. We're not planning to receive any. That's what that line is. But we will ship out, demand, use 10. Right, we'll have 10. Then nothing's going on the third day, so we'll still have 10. We need to be ready on the fourth day with 60. We're going to be starting with 10, so 60 minus 10 means that I'm short 50 right now, so I had better heroically arrange to receive 50, correct? That would cover that, and then I have actually now used up all my inventory, and that's not really a problem until going into the seventh day when we need 20. I'll be going into that day with none, so I'd better schedule to receive how many? Now, I'm glad someone said 20, right? Don't write that. Before you actually commit something in ink to the planned receipt, always glance at the lot size. We need 20. It's true. Sometimes there's extra rows included. The idea of your receipts, your gross needs versus your actual planned receipts. But in this case, we're just saying, you know what? We're going to be short. I really want 20, but I glanced at the lot size. I have to order in multiples of 50. Right, let's get another box then. And actually, we're going to use some of it later anyway, because there'll be 30 left over, and there's this one little need for 10 here. And so at the end of the planning horizon, oh, it's interesting. At the end of the planning horizon, we think we're probably going to wind up. That's probably where that 20 came from, right? 20 left over. Now, this here is when we need to receive those two boxes of 50. This finishing the record, this is considered the great breakthrough and contribution of MRP. It says planned order releases. This is when we need to remember to order this 50 and this 50. How do you fill out this line? Okay, go along, look at planned receipts. I need to receive 50 on the fourth day. Now I glance at the lead time. The lead time is 2 days. Go down to the bottom line and count over 1, 2. This is called time phasing. Oh, note to self, must order 50 on the second day. And then here, down to the bottom line, 1, 2. And then order another 50 on the fifth day. Why? So it arrives on the seventh day right when I need it. That process is known as time phasing. That's considered the big contribution. Getting the right part at the right time is ordering it at the right time. And notice, the whole purpose of the entire record was to obtain that bottom line. The bottom line is the actual plan. It is also the inventory policy, how much to order and when. The planned order releases. So the stuff that I wrote in green and actually in purple, if you pulled up the plan, that was all drawn as information from elsewhere. The stuff that I did in red ink and filled in, those are all of the calculations necessary to produce what we want is that bottom line. We want advice over the next 9 days. How much should I order and when? Well, order a box of 50 on the second day and order a box of 50 on the fifth day. You'll be fine. You'll be fine with respect to what the gross requirements were. Yeah.
What happens if you needed, like, say the lead time was 5 days? So how would that work?
Yeah,
so you couldn't do it.
Right. If like you're saying, say that the lead time was 5 days. This is what we mean by myopia. Okay. Is that it's already too late. One hopes that since we are actually scrolling through time, right? The way that an MRP system is used in its defense is that it's not used every 9 days. you know, people are looking from day to day to day, and it keeps adding. Somebody spotted that before, right, and that's already taken care of. But if this were the situation, and for instance, that order for 60 had just now been added, and the lead time was 5, guess what? Maybe we can pay for express shipping or something, but it's not going to work, right? It's off the left-hand side. We're already late. It's going to be delayed. Either the 60's got to wait, or we have to do something about the lead time. We have to do something special. Good question. Anybody else? Okay. Actually, at this point, we're ready for the MRP algorithm. Because what is MRP? Go back to like my sketches on the board. MRP is a set of these records, one record for each item, except the records are wired together according to the diagram. You say, wired together? Yeah, that's the one last thing we have to add here, is have a couple records, and how is it that you wire them together, and you have an MRP system. Okay, so let's take this example that we've been building this whole time. Oh, actually, on note page 119, this is my quick recipe for just what's known as the MRP algorithm, which is to say, practically speaking, if you are working an MRP problem, what is it that you need to do? The first step, it says enter what you know. MRP problems always start with a lot of information because they're the equivalent of setting up a small information system. So this is note page 120. You need the 3 inputs if you're actually going to create a material requirements plan. So you need the bill of materials. Let's just use the ones that we've been developing. You need a master production schedule. So that's being provided on note page 120 to round this out. You need current inventory records. So they're here. This is the same copy-paste. These are the same lead times that we were working with. And actually, with the current inventory records, let's add something. Because generally speaking, if you're looking up the records on an item, there is another reading concerning each item. I'm just drawing those lines to separate the finished goods from the subassemblies from the parts, because we also are curious about that idea of lot size. And we can't start on the problem unless we know that. So let's say that for the 2 finished goods, I'm not going to write this twice, I'm just going to write it in the band, that the policy on lot size is LFL is the common abbreviation for lot. And it means don't worry about a lot size. Whatever number you need, that's what you can get. But I'm imposing this on the problem. This is just data. I'm adding data. Let's say that all the subassemblies are made in batches of 5. So if you need 1, you have to order another batch. You'll be ordering 5. You order in multiples of 5. And then let's stay with that example with just the 1 yellow wheel. Let's say that any of these parts come in boxes of 50, so the lot size is 50. There. Now we have absolutely all the data that we need, keeping with this one example, to change it into a actual full MRP problem. So here's our 2 finished goods. And MRP is a set of linked records. This, shorthand recipe here, what does this mean? There's a lot of setup, because every piece of data that you were given in an MRP problem has a place on the record. Oh, right, because for every one of those unique items in this problem, if you look on note page 121, here's 2 records, and they've been pre-labeled already to save you some time. Those are the 2 finished goods, right, level 0. And I also wrote in lead time here. But enter what you know. I had just added that business about lot size, so I might as well jot that down. I'm just getting set up. We haven't determined anything. If you turn the next page, we're on level 1, note page 122. Again, they're all labeled already. That's nice. The lead time's already there. But, let's see, lot size. The 3 subassemblies are the top 3 records, so I make a little note, lot size is 5. The orange washer is a Tinker Toy component, so it had a lot size of 50. There are a lot of other Tinker Toy parts. Their records on the next page. I'm just getting set up, entering what I know, 50, 50, 50, 50. And then one of them didn't fit, so it's here, the green bearing. Okay, now I just want to check that I have entered everything that I do actually know. I have been told. Okay, the labels were already there. The lead time's already there. The current on-hand inventory, is not on there yet. All right. So, current on-hand inventory. It is current on-hand inventory. Apparently, we have 20 of the 2 finished goods in stock. We have 10 transmission subassemblies, right? And we have, oh no, wait a minute, that's an axle subassembly, right? Yeah. We have 0 transmission subassemblies, 10 axle subassembly, and 0 top subassembly. And let me just check what I just said, or the numbers don't come out right. Axle subassembly, 10. 10, there's 10 in stock. None here, none here. For the top subassembly, none. For the orange washer, did we have any? No, we don't have any in inventory. I'm noting that down below. Just entering what I know. The on-hand inventory for the red rod said we didn't have any. Said we didn't have any blue rods. That's a big 0. Says we have 80 wheels. And considering the lead time, that's kind of fortunate. And blue wheels, actually, we've got 75. So I'm entering that. And then one last record that didn't fit. There are 30 green bearings. Now do I have everything I've been told written down somewhere on these records? That's done, that's done, that's done, that's done. This is basically the records themselves, the bill of materials. Whoops. There's one last set of numbers that in the interest of setup, I haven't done anything with. And that's these numbers. Because we said one of the inputs is the master production schedule, right? And there's not a lot of them. There's just a 42 for the transaxles and a 23 on the 8th day for the turnstiles. This would be what we want to ship, right? This is what we actually need to produce, and this is how we get started on the rest. We have to remember a principle. Anything that appears on the master production schedule, right, any item, those numbers go into the top line of that item's record. Those numbers are its gross requirements. Well, there's just this 42 for the transaxle under the 9th day. Right, that number, grab it. Next page, 9th day, transaxle, 42. That's where it goes. You might even want to write a little note to yourself from, where did I get the 42? That one came from the master production schedule. It would be essentially wired in right there. Likewise, this row would be wired in. It only has a 23 under the 8th day into the top line of that record. Oh, all right. Now I think I have entered absolutely every number or piece of information. I just didn't write these other zeros that I've been provided. What am I supposed to do next? It says calculate the planned order releases for all level 0 items. This is after setup, which can take a while. All level 0 items. Another way to think about that is fill out the record. Because calculating the planned order releases is obtaining the bottom line. It's now time to fill out the record in order to do that. That exercise that we just did for the generic item. Okay. Well, for all level 0 items. Oh, okay, so only these 2 records. All right, well, there's not a whole lot going on concerning, the finished transaxle. There's 20 in stock, and it's not like customers are knocking down the door to take them away. So we'll still have that same 20 in stock at the dawn of the 9th day when we need to provide 42. That's what the order is. We want to ship them right then. Okay, 42 minus 20, just logic. I'm short 22, correct? I'm short 22. I check up here lot for lot. Anything I want, that's exactly what I can receive. So I say, all right, note to self, then we have to receive, finish. They have to arrive, in some sense, another 22. So between this and this, we can meet that order. Which means that at the end of that day, we will have knocked the inventory down to nothing. Oh, okay. Now, we need to receive them on beginning of the 9th day to finish the record. Now, the time phasing, lead time's 1 day. We need to put in the request the day before. I have calculated the planned order releases for the transaxle. It's just one request for 22 on the 8th day. The turnstile is really similar. There's not much going on for a long time. I'm just scribbling in the ending inventory for the first 7 days, of which in the 8th day we need, we'll have 20, we need 23. I am 3 short. I check, it's lot for lot. Okay, right. So we'll receive 3 right then, and between those 2 things we'll have enough. That does mean it clears out inventory, and that's how this would end. Okay, I need to receive it on the 8th day. Lead time is 1 day. Time phasing, just to finish the record, I must order 3 the day before, which is day 7. There, I've done that. Let me go back to my quick recipe. Calculate planned order releases for all level 0 items. We did that. We filled out the records. Now what? Enter the planned order release of each parent into the gross requirement line of each child's record. This is the wiring. These are the branches. That's why parent and child were so important. Enter the planned order releases into the gross requirements line of each child's record, multiplied by the number of child item required by the parent. Another way to say that, the bottom line of the parent's record becomes the top line of the child's record, right? The bottom line of the parent's record becomes the top line of the child's record. Now, you might be thinking, why? Well, wait. Just visualize. I'm looking at the transaxle. If you look up on the board right now, you know, the 2 children are the axle subassembly and the transmission subassembly. I'm just jotting this down. Those are the 2 children. And we're saying that the bottom line of the parent becomes the top line of the child's record. Right, because we want to request 22 of these on day 8 in order to receive them on day 9, and they will be ready as long as 22 of these and 22 of these are ready on day 8 when we ask. So the bottom line of the parent, that 22, I got to hang on to that thought. I need 22 axle subassemblies and I need 22 transmission subassemblies ready to go right then. And then also, that was 1 child. Or I should say that was 1 item. We also have this 3, belongs to the turnstile, has 3 children, right? The 3 is on day 7. If I want to request 3 on day 7 and then be ready on day 8, that means that, let me think about this, on day 7, I need to request 3 transmissions, 3 top subassemblies, and 3 orange washers. I'm passing the bottom line of the parent to the top line of the child's record. And you'll hear me keep repeating this because this is unfortunately one of the most common mistakes when people are working these kind of problems, right? They want to pair the top line to the top line, the bottom line to the bottom line in the passing. It does not work that way. But this issue, if you look here, the bottom line of the parent gets passed to, that's what these branches were, the top line of the child's records. If we're actually setting up an information system, then these would be the links. It would pass the number along to there. And you say, well, okay, now what? Well, I think that was the end of that step, right? So what's the next step? I did that. go to the next level. Oh, again, that's why we need the product structure diagram. Who's on the next level? Repeat this process for all items on that level. The next level is level 1. Repeat that process, fill out these records. Now that we've done that, we can fill out the records on level 1 and only level 1. You say, well, okay, like for instance, the axle subassembly, not a whole lot going on. Oh, so I'll have 10 when I'm confronted with that request for the 22. Okay, so I am short 12, right? So I should glance at the lot size, plan on receiving 15, right? Dave, do we have the visualizer? Oh, yeah, thanks. Plan on receiving 15. Why? Because they come in batches of 5. So I'm actually asking for 3 batches of 5, which means I'll have a little bit of leftover, which is probably why I had leftover last time. What's left over here? 3? Okay, that's when I need to receive it. Wait a minute, axle subassembly. It had a chunky lead time. I got to be careful about this. 1, 2, 3, 4. That means I need to request they get started on those axle subassemblies on day 4. Transmission subassembly, don't have any going into day 7. That's when we need 3. Okay, we'll have a batch delivered of 5, which leaves 2 left over, which is coincidental, but it's nice. That means that for the next day when I need 22, I'm 20 short, and that's a neat multiple of 5. So that's what I'll plan on receiving, which wipes out the inventory. Okay, that's when I need to receive it. Check for the transmission subassembly. Lead time is only 2 days. Okay, drop down to the bottom line. 1, 2. Order 5 on the 5th day, and 20 the very next day. And you fill out this record, and you fill out this record, and you're done when you have filled out all of the records. Well, we have a whole, oh, right, go to the next level and keep repeating this process. The algorithm works level by level. So finish this out, then pass the bottom line of the parent down to the top line of the child's records. Let me leave you with the answers. 22, we saw that. 3, we saw that. Axle subassembly, let me put it in the right column because it's a 15 on day 3. Transmission subassembly, we just saw that. It's a 5 on day 6 and a 20, or it's a 5 on day 5 and a 20 on day 6. And top subassembly, that's just a 5 on day 4. Now, continuing on, try this on your own and see if you get answers that match mine. The red rod, we do need another box, and we need to order it on the 2nd day. The blue wheel, we do need another box, and we need to order it on the 4th day. We don't need any more yellow wheels. We don't need any more blue wheels. That's the conclusion that you should come to, but watch out with orange washers. We do need another box, and let me put it in the right column. We do need another box, and it is on day 6. Now, where am I getting these numbers? It's day 6, thanks. Yeah, and actually probably is a more reliable backup. Come on, computer, wake up. Why did it do that? There's a spreadsheet on UB Learns that has all of the. I'm actually reading it off of. It's a 50 on day 6. This is mrp.xls. Those are the numbers I just read you. If you can't figure out where they came from, these are the actual answers right here. These should be your computations. So, what I recommend before next week is, okay, wait, forget, you saw that. try to fill out the records. It's okay if it's not matching exactly, in that then you can come to this and take a look at this. And then on Tuesday, what we'll do is we'll actually pick up right here with this and discuss how we came to the numbers. Does that sound like a good plan? Okay, good. Well, now you have something to do for the weekend. I know you needed that. Thanks.